you've got people who are like founders or CEOs or entrepreneurs or whatever you call them, the people that actually run their own business. And these were the people that I noticed who'd built businesses that run independently of where they were or what they were doing. Now, this was the level of freedom that I wanted.
Clearly, if you want to be the type of person that can work from anywhere, there's a little bit of a disconnect from where you are now to where you need to get to be able to start living and working abroad. So that's what we're going to talk about today, about how can you actually do that. So I know the type of work you were doing to enable that move abroad was running a dropshipping business, high-ticket dropshipping business. So how does dropshipping facilitate this digital nomad lifestyle?
Yeah, so I can talk a bit more about the specifics of dropshipping, but just want to pick up on an interesting point you made there about bosses maybe not being open to you wanting to travel and work from the other side of the world whilst in a job. So when Becky and I made this move, which was about 2017, I think, to end of 2017, it was quite unusual. It was very unusual, right? It wasn't really something that many people had heard of. When we got there, obviously, there's a huge nomad community. So amongst the digital nomad scene, it was old news. It's something that people have done for years. But amongst our friends, family, no one had really heard of it. No one knew what that term meant. And it wasn't until the events of 2020 unfolded and everyone was forced to work from home that a lot of employers became a lot more open to the concept of remote work. And it kind of forced people into the world of Zoom meetings and working remotely. So I think people now, we've come out the other side of that, but people now are a little bit, I think there are different levels of freedom. And I just wanted to dive into that because I think that you can almost be tricked into thinking that you have control and autonomy over your life just because you have location freedom. And let me just dive into that quickly to explain what I mean by that. So employees who work in a job, but who are allowed to do so remotely, I mean, that's just your boss being flexible on where you're allowed to work from. And since 2020, I think we've seen a real rise in employer flexibility around that, right? Because people just realize, oh, you can just work from anywhere. But I can't help but feel that you'd still lack the autonomy. And I know that you would, because I had that situation. My employer was very flexible on where the work happened from. I could work remotely at the time. But I always think, well, ask yourself, if you feel like you think you already have the best setup and you have a job already that allows you to work remotely, could you just take 6 weeks off and shut your laptop and would you still earn an income? Because it's not always just about being able to work remotely. It's about not having to live your life based on someone else's demands, right? So I think that if you couldn't close your laptop for 6 weeks and not do anything and the whole thing would, and your income would dry up, then you're always going to have that desire for more autonomy if you're anything like me. Then you've got freelancers. So we met a lot of people who were in this position whilst traveling and meeting other digital nomads. And so those would be people like web designers or people doing jobs like web development or writers or social media managers or, people who are doing paid work, either independently or kind of subcontracted through a company, who have probably the next level of freedom whereby they don't have a specific boss that they're answering to, but again, their income is still linked to their time, right? But then I noticed as I met all of these different people and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, that's great. They're freelancing and working remotely. So they have a higher level of freedom than the employees do, who have to log in at a certain time and, still report to a boss and, they could be let go at any moment. And then you've got people who are like founders or CEOs or entrepreneurs or whatever you call them, the people that actually run their own business. And these were the people that I noticed who'd built businesses that run independently of where they were or what they were doing. Now, this was the level of freedom that I wanted. I realized that this was the type of entrepreneur I wanted to be because I wanted ability to say, not that I probably would because I enjoy the work that I do, but if I wanted to shut my laptop for 6 weeks, I would know that my family's income wouldn't just dry up because the systems that I'd built would continue to run in my absence. And so dropshipping is a brilliant e-commerce model for digital nomads because it doesn't require physical inventory. So you don't need to order stock, you don't need to hold stock, you don't need to put capital aside or have a physical premises. You can run the whole thing from your laptop, coordinating between your team, who can also be based remotely anywhere in the world, and your suppliers, who are usually based in the country where you're primarily selling to, if you're using the model that we both use and now teach, which is the home turf advantage model.
And that's the same model that I use, is the home turf advantage high ticket dropshipping model. And the freedom it's allowed me now compared to when I was an employee is just unmatched. And I think a lot of people, when they will click onto this episode, they'll have this desire that they want to be able to work from anywhere in the world. And you're going through those options that people have. Clearly, the right way to set your goal is to be in a position where not only can you work from anywhere, but you can also work from anywhere from however long you want to work. And also you can start and finish work whenever you want as well. And the way to do that ultimately is to have control over that income stream, and that's to run your own business. And that's why I've got into the home turf advantage business model as well.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, there are different levels of freedom, aren't there? And people would sometimes say, "Oh no, I'm completely remote. Like we hear it sometimes when people are considering starting a business, and then they say, "Oh no, but I'm already remote. My boss lets me work from anywhere. It's totally fine." And I think, but I remember what it's like. And there's kind of this it's difficult to describe. There's almost like a dark cloud of a sense of like someone watching you. Even if your boss is really understanding, you can't help but feel that, if you're on the other side of the world and maybe you're not logged in at 2 p.m. in the afternoon because you're by the pool and you want to enjoy your time in the environment you're in, you can't help but feel this slight sense of guilt, this nagging feeling of like, should I be doing more work because I'm technically on the clock, but I know that my hours are flexible. So am I like, there's this feeling that you can't shake. And someone said to me before I started my first e-commerce business, because I was talking to them about the concept of doing it, and they said that they were an entrepreneur, and they said, you will experience such a freedom of headspace when you decide to leave your current job and start your own. It's unmatched. But currently what you're doing is you're dealing with being an employee and trying to build something else at the same time. It's like there's so many plates spinning in your mind. No wonder you're stressed. So they said, honestly, once you relinquish one thing, you will free up so much headspace. And that is so true. Now I look back and realize what they meant. So I don't know if you've experienced that same feeling as well, James.
100%. I can completely resonate with that nagging sense of guilt. When I was a 9-to-5 employee, even taking my dog out for a walk at lunchtime, although I knew it was lunch and no one was expecting me to be available, by going 20 minutes around the block, I still felt like I needed to quickly check my notifications from the team in case there was something looming for me when I got back to my desk. And then the moment I was able to leave my job and just run my business as my primary source of income, that first Monday morning when I could sit back and relax and know that there was nobody looking over my shoulder, that freedom is what I started it for in the first place. And there'll be a lot of people that are trying to get to that level of freedom as well and want to have that freedom, autonomy, and work from anywhere in the world. So let's dig into your story a bit more as well. So how did you actually go about building a location-independent business?
Yeah, well, there is a specific step-by-step model that we now use and teach, which is the home turf advantage model. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't the home turf advantage mean you have to live on your home turf, i.e. in the UK, if that's where you're based and where you grew up? No, it doesn't. What it means is that the suppliers that you end up working with for your e-commerce business should ideally have stock already in the same country as where the majority of your buyers, your customers live, so that nothing has to cross borders and that you get fast next day delivery to your customers. So we'll dive into that. But crucially, I think the first thing that I needed to determine when deciding to build an online business was that I needed my team to be able to complete the day-to-day tasks on the business model, whatever that were to be, leaving me with complete control over my time. I didn't want to build another job. We talked about that feeling of, worrying that someone's looking over your shoulder. Should you be working all hours of the day? I didn't want that feeling. I wanted to know that regardless of whether I am at work or decide to take a day off, the whole thing continues independently of me. The next step would then be to just choose a business model that is inherently location independent. So one that doesn't require you to order a container worth of stock and go and inspect all of the items and then drive them into Amazon or organize stuff on the ground or have a warehouse where stuff has to go out of, where you have to physically be on the ground or have someone there. I wanted something that was totally online, that I could run from a laptop, that I could kind of get my head around, that wasn't too convoluted when I started. And so I wanted it to be long-term and sustainable as well. So in my case, I wanted something where I could learn to automate and delegate a lot of the tasks that were required to keep the business running long-term, so that I would be comfortable working on different time zones and knowing that my business continued to run whilst I was asleep. And it was quite good actually being on a different time zone when I first arrived in Thailand, because I would work from maybe 8 till 12, 8 a.m. till midday. And during that time, no one in the UK is really awake. And so I had to learn to batch and automate and build processes and figure out what was going to break in that afternoon whilst the UK woke up and I was asleep, or that evening whilst I was asleep, so that the next day I could look at the business and figure out what broke yesterday, why did it break, what could I have done to fix it. And I don't mean break horrifically, but like what went wrong, what customers got upset about certain things, not the information not passing to them correctly, and what could I do to ensure that it didn't happen the next time.